Lesson 6.8 is graphing absolute value equations. Now, we've done a little bit of graphing absolute value, so you know that it has a V shape. So write this down, absolute value equation. A V-shaped graph that points upward or downward is the graph of an absolute value equation. In 5.3, you graphed these by making tables of values. So in this lesson, you will graph by translating the graph of y equals the absolute value of x. A translation, another key word, is a shift of a graph horizontally, vertically, or both. The result is a graph of the same shape and size, but in a different spot. So we're going to be doing some translations. So vertical translations, if you look at both of these, here's my graph of y equals absolute value of x, and here is what it will look like after a vertical translation. It's going up 2, and this 2 is the y-intercept. Okay? So the graphs are the same shape. The y-intercept of the first graph is 0, and the y-intercept of the second graph is 2. So describe how each graph below is like y equals absolute value of x and how it is different. So write this down in your notebook. So A has a shift of +3. So it has a y-intercept of 3. Y-intercept of 3. And this has a y-intercept of -3. They're pretty much the exact same as y equals absolute value of x, except the intercept is different. So that's the only thing that is changing. Now, graphing a vertical translation. So you're going to start with this graph, and you're going to translate the graph down 1 unit. So if I want you to graph these, so try these two in your notes. Okay, so really what you're graphing is the y-intercept. You're going to start there at 4. This is where I'm going to start, and then I'm going to have my V graph go up from that because it is a positive absolute value of x. If it was a negative absolute value of x, it would go down. Here I'm at -5 and I'm still positive, so it's going up. So those are pretty simple, just a vertical translation. Now, writing an absolute value equation. So if I ask you to write an equation for each translation of y equals absolute value of x, 8 units down, the equation is this, the absolute value of x minus 8. Notice the minus 8 is on the outside of the absolute value marks. If I want to go 6 units up, then you just add 6. So for each translation, write an equation. So jot down an equation real quick for these two. So this would be y equals the absolute value of x plus 2. And this is y equals the absolute value of x minus 5. Very simple. Okay, so the following tables of values and graphs show what happens when you graph where the -3 or the +3 is inside the absolute value marks. So notice the difference. Here, it was outside the absolute value marks. It was after. So that I'm going up or down. Now, if it's inside the absolute value bars, notice what happens to the graph. It shifts to the left or to the right. So, this is the difference. So now, if I say graph each equation by translating, if I gave you this equation, y equals the absolute value of x plus 2, notice how it's in. That means you're going to go 2 units to the left. So notice what happened. If I add 2 in the absolute value, I'm going to the left. If I subtract 2, I'm going to the right. My translation is going to the right. And you can look back at this table and see what happens. So if I'm minusing 3, I would have, if I put in -3 minus 3 is -6, but that makes it a +6. So it's like a negative minus a negative makes the number higher, so that's why it's going to the right. And then a negative plus a positive makes the number smaller, so it's going to the left. So that's kind of why it works backwards. So try these two. Graph each equation by translating y equals the absolute value of x. So you have y equals the absolute value of x minus 4. So that means I'm going to add 4 to my v graph. I'm going up 4. 4 on the, going to the right 4. And here I'm going to the left 1. So writing an absolute value equation. So this one says, if I say I have y equals absolute value of x and I want to go 8 units to the left, your equation is x plus 8. If I go 6 units to the right, it's x minus 6. So it's kind of the opposite of what we've been doing, and you kind of already know that with absolute value, is everything seems kind of backwards because it makes it all positive. So whenever you go to the left, you're going to add. You might want to write that down. Whenever you go to the right, you're going to subtract. Okay, so try these two. So if I want to write an equation, my equation would be y equals the absolute value of x minus 5. Because I'm going to the right, so that means I'm going to subtract. And then y equals the absolute value of x plus 7. All right, that's it for your notes.